right, peace and blessings, family. So it is Monday after Thanksgiving weekend, and just being quiet. It's I think it's below 30 degrees outside, so I'm not going anywhere. But I've been posting in my Living and Awakened Life Circle Facebook group. Planting seeds, sharing information that I know over time the right souls will find. And I also have my YouTube, Empress Chakra Wanda. I have several different playlists there, but one of them is my podcast, Living an Awakened Life podcast. I've listed there. I've been spending a lot of time in the research of my family history. I did have a Zoom call yesterday, Sunday afternoon, and we had myself, Natasha and Leon from Kansas, Angela from North Carolina. Oh, and my cousin from Spotsylvania, Virginia, who I'll speak about her a lot. She helped me in a great deal with further understanding about my family's history from my father's side that ties to a particular plantation. I talk a lot about it because it's incredible information, which I wanted to kind of share a little bit with you because the journey of research is of your ancestry, getting into the genealogy world. It's worth it if you allow yourself to spend the time with it. It doesn't mean that just because you've not either done it before or maybe you have started entering into researching about your family history and you come across a block, don't stop. I strongly feel, I actually know and sense the gifts that are waiting for us as you research your ancestors. That's why I'm taking my time to share what is unfolding and how energetically it ties to living right now and being able to navigate and move forward in this dimension right now. My cousin, in the summer of 2024, and I know that some of you may have been following, but there could be someone that comes across this the very first time, wherever I'm posting it. And so I'm going to repeat some things. So in summer of 2024, through my father repeating a certain story, I was introduced to a 6th generation cousin. I'll put it, that's short, but it didn't happen straight line like that. And a 6th generation cousin who had been doing research for years so generously made me aware of our connection and of the 21,000 person family tree that she has compiled, which leads significantly to a significant historic transaction or activity, which is hidden in plain sight. It's not known nationwide or in the history of enslavement, but our family ties back to a significant event. And the event is that 72 years before Emancipation Proclamation. You know, a lot of times when you're listening to stuff like this, you're processing, you're thinking, you're trying to take in, but you're processing. And I just want to say, take a deep breath and just kind of listen. You're aware of Emancipation Proclamation, right? That's the date of July 4th is when we supposedly celebrate that. We've been doing that for years. And then we have Juneteenth that didn't come until many years later. And many of us as melanin people really don't even dive deep into that. We don't even dive deep into the fact that that wasn't complete freedom. Even when Texas, Juneteenth is when Texas finally was made aware, years after Emancipation Proclamation. And even with that, there were many people still enslaved because they didn't get to know the news. And then for some that did, how they gonna make it on their own? There's a lot of layers to this whole thing. So tying it back to what I want to share with you in this now moment. I have a document that my cousin introduced me to. So it is a dissertation, a special report required for people that are acquiring their PhD. And there's a gentleman that wrote a dissertation that's over 700 pages. I'm going to show it because I got a copy. And he's John Randolph Barden, PhD, Duke University, 1993 when it was published, but I believe I read that it took 6 years. But even in reading this 700-page document, let me turn it around so you can see. Now, I had this dissertation printed out, y'all, and I didn't even request it double-sided. So I wasn't thinking. I was just so excited to be introduced to this. And, I'm only putting it in the private group because I believe there's a copyright issue, a copyright on it. And I want to write and get permission to share because I want to share my journey to include coming across this dissertation, right? And once I talked with my cousin, and then she sent me the dissertation, a link to it, I was like, oh my God. This document, y'all, is a compilation of the research that this professor did. And I think I'm going to read it's just a little bit of, it talks about what he did, his acknowledgments, for getting this together. I'll skip through some stuff. This document, 700 pages. He's given acknowledgement. I want to express my appreciation. Okay, first it says, first of all, I want to thank Betty Levener and Nancy Carter Crump. Okay, who introduced me to the Carter family and the Nominee Hall community. Almost 15 years. This is 15 years from 1993. Who have provided input and fresh perspectives on my occasions since then. Okay. I want to express my appreciation to all the librarians and archivists who rendered professional assistance during my search for an examination of the fragmented papers of the Nominee Hall estate. Look, Special thanks are due to staff members at Virginia Historical Society, the Virginia State Archives, the Special Collections Department at the William R. Perkins Library, Duke University, the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation Libraries, the Earl Gregg Swam Library at the College of William and Mary, the Manuscript Divisions in the Library of Congress, the Swedenborg School of Religion, and the Library of Maryland History at the Maryland Historical Society. This is a person that had to do lots of legwork. I don't know what prompted him to choose to do a dissertation about the Carter family and their plantations, which my ancestors lived, enslaved, and worked, and were brought to. In the 700 pages, I can read letters, diaries, inventory. So look, let's just, chapter 1, cabins, quarters, and mansion, the development of the Nominee Hall estate in Virginia Northern Neck. 2, chapter 2, a scene of horror almost inconceivable, the transatlantic slave trade and the Carter family. I know right there, just some of the words I said was triggering. So just take a deep breath. But I, in prayer, am learning to stay in the middle ground, recognizing that this is a gift that I've been given to be a part of the knowledge. And it is rightful knowledge. I just turned 66. Before this summer, I had no idea of an aspect of my bloodline. And many of us as melanin people don't. So, I don't stop at uncovering facts and truths that we're literally sitting on. I got to visit a plantation, Nominee Hall, this summer or this October, because the descendants of the enslaver and the historical society there, which was mentioned, one of them, want to recognize their ancestor for freeing over 500 slaves 72 years before Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. My cousin, I believe, is working on a project, spearheading, I assume, or working with others to make this known. So the descendants of the enslaver for the third year has a ceremony to acknowledge us as descendants. And I attended that with my father. I drove onto the land and stood by unmarked graves. I mean, I don't have a feeling, but I didn't go on to, I could see the graves, but I didn't really walk down amongst them. But I don't have a word for how this feels, but I do have a word for the momentum of what I'm being called, and that is to be, for my branch of the family, to continue to understand and put my eyes on and share with my family for those that care. Sometimes doing this you feel like others don't care, but it may not be the people in this moment. It won't may not be the people in this moment, in this season of 2024, in this dimension, in this time. It could be their children, their children's children. It could be like, how can I not, coming across this, learning about the branch that I tie into a bigger tree and all the nuances of our history, the tone of my skin comes from this plantation. Ooh, child. Marinate in that. So there's 10 chapters, 700 pages. Again, the first chapter is about the cabin quarters and mansion. Second chapter is about the transatlantic slave trade and the Carter family's involvement. 3, remembering grandfather's uncle, kinship and friendship ties among African Americans at the Carter and Nominee Hall. I look forward to getting into that chapter. Number 4, Black Hands Shaping the Master's World, Division of Labor on the Nominee Hall Plantation. Number 5, Bitter Complaints, Negotiating in an Unequal World. Number 6, An Opportunity for Freedom, the Nominee Hall Community During the American Revolution. Number 7, Communing Side by Side, the Impact of Evangelical Religion. Number 8, Reluctant Pilgrims, Removals and Separations in the 1780s. 9, Letting Down the Bar, the Emancipation Plan. And I believe that's when Robert Carter III created a deed of will, a deed of trust. Something, here it is. Wait a minute. A deed of trust, releasing over 500 men, women, and children. It actually ends up being closer to 600 because they didn't. He wrote a document that listed all of his enslaved people. They had to go down to a courthouse. I'm giving it in simple terms, and prove who they were. It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. So, on August 1st, 1791, Robert Carter III, master of the Nominee Hall estate in Virginia. I'm reading from the dissertation, okay? Signed a deed that led to the gradual emancipation of 511 enslaved African Americans living on his plantations, plus their descendants. No other single instance of manumission on such a large scale is known to have occurred within the United States prior to 1861. Using the correspondence and plantation records of the Carter family, as well as Virginia court and tax records, this study follows the development of the Nominee Hall slave community from its beginnings in the 1720s and 1730s to the period of emancipation in the 1790s and the 1800s. Intensive case studies of this kind can augment more general studies of the experience of enslaved families in 18th century Virginia and can deepen our understanding of the early African American experience and the dynamics of race slavery. Despite the traumas of the Middle Passage, African Americans in the Nominee Hall community soon formed new kinship ties and friendships, adapting African patterns to their new circumstances. They also provided skills needed for the successful operation of the estate and developed considerable adroitness in negotiating with members of the county, Virginia, Wait a minute. Okay. In negotiating with the members of the slaveholding class, the amelioration of the conditions of slavery. The 1770s saw new opportunities open for the African Americans at Nominee Hall. Some used the turmoil produced by the American Revolution to escape from the estate. Others took advantage of the egalitarian nature of the evangelical religion, then spreading through the region to interact with their master on more nearly even terms. However, this promising decade was followed by economic and agricultural disruptions in the 1780s, leading to sales and forced moves of many African Americans in the estate and breaking many of the ties that bound them together. The later chapters describe the difficulties that the members of the Nominee Hall community had to confront in establishing themselves as free people in the face of a hostile slaveholding elite. The success of the Nominee Hall Emancipation Plan demonstrated the weakness of slaveholders' arguments that free black people could not be a productive part of Southern society. So, I'm going to go right to chapter 2. It says, so I go right to it because after I spoke with my 6th generation cousin, I had visited my dad on Father's Day of May 2024. The day before was Juneteenth, and I was blessed to attend an actual Juneteenth event. And what's so significant for me in reflecting is that the event was carried out by one of my favorite clients, Dr. Vonda Rogers, and her family in her neighborhood. And the invited speakers, one was a judge who's been a judge for 40 years in that particular area of North Carolina. And what I liked, what the judge did was take us sort of on a visioning journey of what it would be like in that area in the times where black people were just beginning to be able to vote. And so that was very poignant because, again, she brought in the context of what was going on years ago in that and the things that black people had to do in order to be okay with voting. And so I keep that in mind for fast forward going to my visit my Father's Day, and then hearing him repeat a story of what he discovered when he did his DNA and worked in the ancestry system back in 2011. So that prompted me when I came back that Wednesday after Father's Day in 2024. I remember my dad said, you need to follow my 5th generation cousin. Her name is Crystal Gaskins. And I called her on that Wednesday, in Messenger, because I remember following her from 2011, I believe. And the rest is history. She stayed on the phone. She gave me information. 4 hours we were on the phone from 8 at night on that Friday till 1 in the morning. She took me on a tour to view the 21,000 person family tree in Ancestry. She sent me other links and information, and then she told me about this dissertation. My whole life has changed. In general, for many, there's different things. Supporting my family back home, with the care, of my daddy. He's healthy and doing well, but there are changes with regard to his aging. So I've had to travel a lot. Coming across this information is both melancholy, but it's activated another. I I'm sitting in a space. Let me just say this. How many of y'all know past your great grandparents? Or even think about or reflect on a regular. Some households you keep your pictures up, you keep your memories in your heart. Some, we got the newer generation that the digital pictures, you understand, and they don't want to hear about nothing. I'm not saying all, but for real. When I was growing up, I could sense family, like love deeply. And no family is perfect, but I could sense it as a child, even though I couldn't articulate it, but it's like yesterday to me. And that just from my grandparents on my father's side was like yesterday. And there were pictures around us in the house that I had no clue about. And then hadn't even had a chance as I was a young adult to ask my grandparents. My grandfather died young. I think he was 57, maybe 47. I don't know. My grandma was in her 70s or close to 80s. But beyond that, until this summer, there's no way I can tap back into the traditional world, which I wasn't tapped into anyway. You know all y'all I'm woo woo. Y'all know I'm woo woo too. And if you don't know me, you just check the page, check the YouTube, whatever. But I'm here. I'm in this thing. I've been introduced to a whole world of my ancestors. Ain't no way I can't not get to know and read about them. Like right here. Just this is which chapter did I end up with? Yeah, the Emancipation Plan, the manumission of releasing his slaves. He couldn't release all of them at the same time. There was oh God, there was some rules around the manumission that said that the enslaver had to provide for their way of living and make a way for them to live, and I believe that he did. They couldn't take their children with them until the children were adults. It had all kinds of layers to it. But here's the deal. God, I mean, if you come across something in your life right now that you've been made aware of, it's like a treasure chest, how can you go back into your regular way of living and being? I mean, yeah, it's easy to because we're in a big hamster wheel. Life pulls us at us, just making a living. And you may be doing things that you love to do, but still, you're in a cycle. I'm trusting the divine all through this process. I'm trusting the guidance and the whispers of my ancestors that reside in my DNA and resides in yours too. So let's get at it. Chapter 2. A scene of horror almost inconceivable. The transatlantic slave trade and the Carter family. So let's just take emotion out of it and just receive. When I got off the phone with my cousin, I heard in my spirit two things. Find out about the origin of the name Gaskins, and then where did the enslaved Africans that ended up on this plantation come from? And I'm getting a complete answer right now because I went right to the dissertation. But back then during the summer, I couldn't go to sleep that night. I Googled. I know I'm getting to it. Just a minute. I hear yeah. Look. I know I'm loved. Hold on. After getting off the phone with my sixth generation cousin, I heard in my spirit, where did these Africans come from? Where did the sacred souls come from that ended up on this plantation? And I Googled, and I think something came up as first Africans arriving in Virginia, and it showed it coming into Port Comfort. That's what it was called before it was called Hampton. And came across the museum site, and oh my God, there's a document on their website, a PDF that was, I think it was done in 2018 or something like that, and it told the whole story of the first Africans landing in Virginia in 1619. But I had come through this document, and in chapter 2, it starts off in May 1726. So 1619, first slaves in Virginia. But in 1726, the ship John and Betty ended its long voyage from West Africa and entered the Chesapeake Bay, sailing up the Rappahannock River to the eastern end of Virginia's northern neck. The ship dropped anchor off a point of land dominated by a long brick house called Carrotaman. That's one of the 17 plantations of the Carter family, y'all. Aside from the crew, the only people on board the vessel were 90 men, women, and children, all of them Africans, and all of them now enslaved. Before this voyage, there had been few things to tie these 90 people together, and most of them probably did not know each other before their long voyage began. Very likely they represented different nations, several religions, and varying levels of wealth or poverty. Some of the men had probably been taken prisoners in war, while most of the women and children had perhaps been captured when their villages were overrun by raiders. Several may have been sold to satisfy debts or for committing serious crimes. A few may have been kidnapped singly. However, all of them now shared the misfortune of having been caught up in the gruesome transatlantic system of forced bondage. Most had undoubtedly been forced to march from their point of capture to the coastal factories or other holding places, where they had been transferred to the John and Betty to begin the long passage across the Atlantic. May 1726. Now, I'm going to stop there because as I read this, I cannot not go through this whole thing in time. Gaskins. Where did that originate? I learned from my cousin, that it ties to a French family name. I did some research on my own, and I found that there was, I think, a plantation called Gascony or Gascoigne. It's either the family's name is Gascoigne, and anyway, it ties to France. So I still, as you see this type of journey, I realize that some of us with information like this have more information than many, many other melanin souls. So if I have access where I can put my hands on it, it'd be a shame not to continue. And for those of you who I've shared this journey, this story about me going to the plantation. It was interesting, the response. I got a response from a woman who was like, I could never. She couldn't even get past me saying going on to the plantation. It's like I couldn't. And it's cool, right? Bless our hearts, because here's the deal. I want to know, for a family, black families or families, period. I mean, you could be mixed. I just want to know. What do you tell your children? Like, how do you explain your blackness and the history of black people, right? Or do you not, you don't go there at all? And you feel like you're going to move forward in the light of love. That's cool. I'm not saying you got to be mad at people right now. I'm saying, when do you stand on your complete awareness of who you are? I believe the complete awareness of who you are will help resolve some issues that you're facing right now. And not on the outside, but on the inside. I think it's no different than being an orphan. I've never been an orphan. But then again, I feel like I'm a part of the collective that is in the orphan energy as far as black people is concerned. Let me lay that right there. Marinate in that idea. Because if you had questions within you that just keep coming up and you just don't know why, there's some reasons why. What I read earlier about in his dissertation, that he said most likely families were torn apart, people that landed there weren't from the same communities and all of that. Are we not experiencing that now? What do your kids run into when they go to school? They could be real close friends with others cultures that have no idea but they're going to grow up and eventually it's going to come back full circle. The questions are going to be there. What is it even like to feel complete and whole? I don't feel complete and whole just yet. I know that this is going to lead me to, I have done my DNA. Yep, I've seen the percentage. I've done ancestry DNA, and I do plan on doing black ancestry. And there's a lot of people that say, oh, I don't want to do my DNA, my blood, they're going to use it for, let me tell you, when you was born, they took your blood. So just scrub all that. And a lot of things with us as black people, we have parts of us that don't want to pursue. And not all of us. That don't want to uncover. We don't want to see. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to think about it. I remember there was many movies and things. After Roots, I was traumatized. And then 12 Years a Slave, I wish I had never seen it. Because we throw ourselves, like if you're highly intuitive, you throw yourself right into the emotion of it. And I'm saying, you know what? Don't our ancestors deserve you not to retreat in the pain of the memory, but to step up, go back, call their names? My cousin's got a project called Call Their Name, I think. Oh my gosh. This is no coincidence. This is only divine synchronicity. Everywhere when it comes to the idea of you, do you know who you are? And do you understand your origin, not just from your great-grandparents, okay? And your origin wasn't the history of slavery. That's not where you started. I own all percentages of who I am. And I want to understand all percentages of who I am. I want to understand, as a spiritual being, my origin. Yeah, how my people, my blood, even though there's people that are close to me, family, friends, whatever, they can't get past. They sticking with what they've been told now, which holds many people captive. It is okay to embrace. I believe we are designed to embrace the fullness of who we are. Because my walk and what I've been exposed to spiritually, religiously, all of it, I'm in the crock pot. Every part of me, you gonna taste. And every part of me, I want to taste. And I trust in this deeper guidance. I'm just pray I'm given enough time to touch the origin, the truth. And I know it's possible. And I know there are others that are traveling with me. So I'm just giving you an example. And for the things that are happening in today's time, in the place that I'm in right now, in the U.S. of A., in this falling out or aftermath of this political idea, this work, this journey, this unfolding gives me more fire to stand up, stand in, stand out collectively with others of a similar vibration to navigate dealing with the so-called powers in place. Because I see a lot of melanin people upset about what's happening in a White House, which is part of the distraction. I see a lot of people upset and fight amongst us about religion, which is part of the distraction. It's right here in black and white. Did not say they kept us apart. Took us from different places. But I didn't see. I saw what I see between these papers and all of history, anything that you can read about, is that as they were faced with the horror and they could not speak the same language, but they had the same color, they figured out a way to survive. For those that didn't choose to tap out, God rest all of the souls. And you are your ancestors. Marinate in that. Peace and blessings.